We recently went on a Florida to Canada road trip, and on today's video, we're going to go over the highlights of the trip, some of the expenses we had, the places we stayed at, the restaurants we ate at, to help you guys prepare your own Florida to Canada road trip. And also, so if you're planning a road trip like this, you have a ballpark idea of how much money you can spend. So in today's video, we're going to help you prepare your Florida to Canada road trip. We were on the road for 14 days, and according to Katie's calculations, we spent just under $4,500. I had budgeted between $7,000 to $8,000 for this road trip, so I found that number to be strangely low. After all, our 28-day California road trip ran us over $11,000. That means that we were spending a whopping $397 a day on that road trip. On our Florida to Canada road trip, we were only spending $317 a day, and that includes we had awesome food, live music, lots of international fees. We ate a lot of lobster, expensive seafood, and we stayed at only brand new Marriott hotels. We did cut out shopping completely on the Canada road trip. I told Katie no souvenirs. We're doing this road trip, but there's no extra expenses, which was difficult for her because she wanted to buy souvenirs along the entire way. Instead, we opted for the free option of collecting rocks from naturally scenic areas, and that was a free souvenir that didn't literally cost us a single dime. Here's the approximate route we followed, which brings us to 36 states. And we did miss out on Vermont. In Montreal, we did have to spend $50 on a pair of Crocs for Katie because her sandals broke. Tolls and fines are usually part of the process with these road trips, and I still haven't got all of the tolls that we're going to have to pay throughout the entire road trip. They're going to come little by little in the mail. I'm still waiting for the Toronto toll roads, which I know are really expensive. And while we were in Queens in New York City, we already got our first ticket. In Queens Parkway, I received a ticket for going 37 in a 25. That camera that we just passed right there on video sent me a ticket in the mail that set us back $50. In chronological order, our first expense was $33 in Valley, Georgia at a Buc-ee's gas station. That's how much gas our Toyota Camry used up getting from Tampa area all the way into Middle Georgia. We settled down in Calhoun, Georgia for the first night at a Marriott hotel that ran us just under $170. Fuel, hotels, and eating will usually put you at a ballpark of about $300 a day when you're road tripping. Despite being extraordinarily expensive, pushing at least $36 a day, we always eat at Starbucks because their food's consistent, and the last thing you want to do is get sick on the road. Hotels usually put a small hold on your credit card, and as we started driving through Tennessee, we got $23 back for Marriott. If you're traveling internationally or you're not part of the hotel membership, like we're part of Marriott Bonvoy for reward points, in those cases, your hold can be as much as $200 per night. We went from Georgia into eastern Tennessee and eastern Kentucky to take a look at the Appalachian Mountains. We spent about 2 days in the Michigan-Detroit area. My wife was born in Michigan and she was feeling a little homesick, so we spent some time in Michigan and we ate at this Coney Island breakfast place. That was about $40. It was really nice to see the part of Michigan my wife grew up in. It's just gorgeous up there. Yeah, I was really excited to spend 2 days in the Ann Arbor, Detroit area. Just a great place to spend 2 days of your vacation up there. There's nothing quite like learning a little bit about your marriage mate by seeing the places where they spent their childhood. Unfortunately, we finally got to get out of the Ann Arbor area because I was really excited to cross over into Canada, even though I had to spend a few days in Michigan against my freaking will. I mean, here we are about to cross into freaking Canada for the first time, and she's like, "Well, I want to spend a few days in Michigan." For about $170, you can stay in Detroit, Michigan. Best money ever spent. $7 poorer and a 786% increase in our life expectancy, we paid the Ambassador Bridge toll and crossed into Canada. Since I was too afraid to hold any cash money in Detroit, I actually withdrew 200 Canadian dollars in Canada, and that actually cost me $150 US plus almost $10 in other fees. So for 160 US dollars, I got about 200 Canadian dollars. My first experience having Canadian money in my hands was quite amazing. They actually have Ronald Reagan's wife on the Canadian money, and it's see-through. It looks a lot more like real money versus American money, and it says Banque du Canada on it. And unlike American money where they're wearing some stupid feathered hat from the 1800s, the people on Canada's money are wearing Cuban link chains. So I'm going to go ahead and say that Canadian money is a lot more progressive and a lot cooler than US money. The first city that we saw in Canada was Toronto, where we got to see the Seattle Space Needle. I always wanted to see this thing. Hey, can you stop freaking messaging me while I'm trying to work, bro? Here I am trying to make an educational video, and this woman won't stop messaging me. While in the outskirts of Toronto, we ate at La Bonita Colombian restaurant, and that set us back $71. You can find Colombian food in most large cities, and I will tell you, it is one of my favorite cuisines out there. While definitely not on the healthy side, Colombian food is amazing. I'll get a bandeja paisa, which is like a peasant's dish, and I'll usually pair that up with a milkshake, usually out of mango or some other tropical fruit. Rice, beans, and different types of meat. It's an awesome dish. I did use my debit card for the vast majority of my transactions, and let me just tell you that those $1 or $2 fees add up tremendously. So make sure that you use your debit card as little as possible if you enter Canada, because you're going to get a fee for every single transaction. Overall, things in Canada cost about what they would cost here in the United States. Hotels were running about $220 a night, and the hotel fee for Marriott was $5 or $6 per every single transaction. Starbucks cost the same, eating out cost the same. We ate at a really nice steakhouse in Ontario, and that ran us $96. That's about what a steakhouse in the United States would cost you. Fueling up in Canada was a little bit more complicated. While it cost the same as in the United States, I'm pretty sure when you transfer it from liters to gallons, I was actually paying more. Fueling up in Canada is different because instead of paying in gallons, you're paying in liters. I never did the mathematical equation, but it seemed like Canada, you're going to pay a little bit more for fuel. Also, your credit card has to be pre-approved for a certain amount, so the process of paying for fuel at the pump in Canada is very different than what would be in the United States, where you just run your card. In Canada, you have to pre-approve an amount first, and since I didn't know what it would cost and what was reasonable, it was very complicated to figure out the equations, so it was kind of awkward getting gas in Canada. So I got gas as much as possible so I wouldn't have to try to figure out the mathematical equation. It really did seem like I couldn't figure out exactly the equation between how much I had to pre-approve. It was just awkwardly weird getting fuel in Canada. So just be prepared for a hassle at the pump if you've never been to Canada. And Marriott was charging between $5 to $6 for every single transaction. That adds up to quite a bit. So when you go to Canada, figure that between fuel, international fees, and other charges on your debit card, it's going to add up to quite a bit, and you're really taking a loss with all these transaction fees and differences in payments. When traveling to Cuba, for example, I felt like your US dollar was extended, but traveling to Canada, man, it really does limit your budget when you start getting hit with all these transaction fees. We're still waiting from my phone company AT&T to see if I'm going to be charged for roaming, because I couldn't figure that out on the internet. Couldn't get any conclusive answers on roaming fees. On top of that, there's not really much help from AT&T, so I don't even know if we're gonna get hit with roaming fees, and if we do get hit with it, how much it's going to be. So there's definitely a lot of question marks with the actual cost of being in Canada with US money. In Toronto, there's also a very time-saving toll road, which you're going to have to use if you value your time more than your money. I will tell you, I haven't got the fees in the mail yet, but some people have told me that every single time you hop on a Canada toll road that's prepaid, it can run as much as $50. And again, I still haven't got that in the mail, but I suspect I'm going to be running between $50 to $100 in fees from Canada toll roads. All of these expenses are kind of after the fact. These are things you don't even think about when you're traveling. But I will tell you, you're gonna have to budget in some type of way for roaming fees, toll roads, and all types of unexpected international fees that you probably never thought about while traveling within the United States. Maybe I'm wrong on this, but it seems like to me the actual cost of living in Toronto is actually even more difficult than cities like New York City or Los Angeles. Hopping back into the United States, a hotel stay in Bath, Maine at a residence was only $135 US. Let me give you guys some short clips from our stay in Maine so you can understand that yes, you're paying a lot less for stuff in Maine, but the customer service and hygiene and effort that these people put into life in places like Maine is so unsatisfactory that really you pay little because you get very little. So we'll see if there's a wait at this particular Applebee's. But the last Applebee's we went to, there was a huge wait. Good old Alabama right here. In the state of Maine, where we are right now, these states like West Virginia, Alabama, Maine, they don't want migrants in their states. But when you see the condition that these states are in, when you see how bad customer service is and all the problems that these states have, it's very clear to anybody like myself. Maybe to them it's not clear because, you know, they don't leave their little potato towns, but to somebody like myself who, you know, travels across the country and now are going to other countries, we're starting to realize that, you know, places that have a lot of immigrants, if you got a lot of immigrants, you know, you're not going to wait at Applebee's, you know? So we're in our hotel room. As you can see, it's like the floor is like squishy and it makes noise. The air conditioner, you can literally, you can hear it and it smells like food. It smells like somebody was cooking, like, there's a little kitchen in here and it smells like food. You can see on the light how like it's like, yeah, this is basically like deep. Look at how you walk around here, you can hear your feet because like the floor's like sticky. So there's like maple syrup stuck on everything. And you can smell like the smell in this room. You can smell like bacon or maple syrup or something. Now the bathroom does look clean. But again, the smell of like cooked maple syrup or something is strong. It's not as bad in the bathroom, but again, as we're walking around, the floor's so sticky. Listen. Okay, guys, so we got moved to another room because that room was so nasty. Now, there's a different smell inside of this room, but it's not as repugnant. But I'm pretty sure somebody was cooking like ethnic food in that other room. So back to this kind of a little bit bigger room. But anyways, it doesn't smell pleasant in here, but it doesn't smell as bad. And the air conditioning vent is out here, and there's a door, so at least we won't have to hear the air conditioning vent. This is a Marriott hotel, and they're literally using tape to hold up the piece of trim from falling. There's literally just tape holding up the trim. This is the ghettoest Marriott I've ever stayed at. This is quite literally worse than Alabama hotels. Let me check the bed sheets before we do anything. I bet, like, I don't hope they're not disgusting. But this is like, dude, Maine is like backwards. Doesn't look too bad, and it looks a little bit cleaner than the other room. Let's see what this looks like. Look how much dust. Look how much dust there is on everything. You can literally see the dust on stuff. Dude, Maine is freaking disgusting, bro. Maine is like on par with Alabama. The bathroom doesn't look too bad. The bathrooms are actually pretty clean. Don't look too bad. You can usually find like really nasty crap. Like if you ever go to a hotel room, watch. Sometimes like you'll find like the nastiest things. This is pretty bad for a Marriott. Of course, the test of all tests is to see if there's bed bugs. And you do that by lifting this up and seeing if there's anything black up underneath here. Luckily for us, there's nothing here that would indicate bed bugs. And they have like 2 layers of this stuff. But look at the, oh, look how old this mattress is, bro. It's like yellow, like that's white, it's like yellow. What the crap? Dude, this is an old mattress. Do you know for a mattress to be yellow, how many thousands of people have slept on this bed, bro? There's a bed bug.
Really?
Literally looking at a bed bug.
Ugh.
I'm not even kidding, look. I don't think bed bugs are that big. Is that a bed bug?
What?
A bed bug. It's like a little
Flea?
something. Bed bugs are gonna be really, really tiny. So if you'll see them, let's see if I can see them. They're gonna be really, they're almost impossible to see with your naked eye.
You usually see the poo.
You'll see the poop, not the bugs, though.
Yeah.
I don't see any. Yeah, you can see them, bro. Look, right there, look. Right in the center of the screen, look, right. That is literally a bed bug. Look, right there, that is literally a bed bug.
What are you gonna do?
There it is right there. It's dead, but it's a bed bug. That is literally a bed bug right there. Not sure if it's alive or not. The hygiene of this hotel is definitely questionable. I hate staying in hotel rooms that aren't perfect, but you're in Maine and the options are limited. So basically, guys, Maine is like the Alabama of the Northeast. That should just give, whoa, I almost fell. That should just give you an idea. We are in the Alabama of the Northeast. Tomorrow we can hop into New York, Massachusetts, and be back in civilization. Welcome to the beautiful coast of Maine. So the coast of Maine is absolutely one of the most beautiful places in the United States. I'm gonna say it's not quite like California coast, but it's definitely in the top 10 most beautiful places that I've seen in the country. While along Interstate 95, the big cities in Maine are actually pretty crappy. Maine doesn't have like an incredibly high crime rate, but their overdose rates are some of the highest in the country. And you'd figure if you have a high overdose rate, then you have a lot of use, and use is a crime. Whether law enforcement is prosecuting it or not, that's a whole different question. And I hear that within the fishing community, so people that actually work in those fields, they're the ones with a huge part of the problem as well, from what the locals told me. If you've never seen the Maine coast, it's an absolute must in the United States. It needs to be up there right after Florida, California, Colorado. I would say 4th and 5th. Definitely consider either like the Appalachian Mountains or the Maine coast. This is a life experience that I never thought I would have the opportunity to do, and the charm of these coastal communities and the relaxed vibe is just unmatched. And I would say that after seeing Canada for the first time, the second most exciting thing about this road trip was seeing the coast of Maine. It's absolutely one of the most gorgeous places you're ever gonna see. The hospitality and customer service was below par, and I've noticed that the states that have the lowest percentage of foreign-born people, West Virginia, Alabama, and Maine, seem to also have the worst customer service, because people that live here don't move to other places a lot, and they also don't have a lot of foreigners, may it be from other countries or other states. So it's kind of a more reclusive place where mostly just locals go there. I'm not saying that they don't have a lot of tourism, they obviously do, but it's just a place that doesn't really seem to cater to the outsider as much. So if you travel a lot and you have really high hygiene expectations, you're going to find it a little bit difficult and sometimes even frustrating going to restaurants and staying at hotels in Maine. But other than that, it's an incredible experience. I found it hilarious how the people in Maine think they don't get paid enough, just like Alabama. They complain about how their salaries aren't enough to live. I asked them how much their rents were, and everybody told me about $1,000 a month. And I'm like, wait, you're paying $1,000 a month and you're complaining about $18 an hour? It seems like they just want to have everything handed to them, just like in Alabama. It's that same backwards mentality and the same backwards complacency that you would find in the Deep South. Eating at this particular restaurant, we had some lobster rolls, and the price tag was $120 with tip. That is about what these fancy lobster places are going to cost you anywhere in the United States. And if you've never had lobster from the Northeast, it's definitely a lot fresher and better than in other parts of the country. And it's, again, a must-do travel experience in the United States. So we finally got to see Maine, one of the most beautiful travel destinations in the country. And I will advise you, if you go to Maine, stick to the beautiful coastal areas and the beautiful wooded northern parts of the state. But along I-95, you can expect horrible customer service, a lot of addiction, and well, it's just all the crappy things you would expect to find along Interstate 95. You even have homeless camps and a lot of bad neighborhoods in Maine, just like you would find in any other state. I know the name Maine brings to mind beautiful coastal scenery, but there are bad inner city areas in Maine. It's not exempt from that. A lot of people assume just because of the demographics of Maine that doesn't exist. In fact, today in the United States, white areas actually have higher addiction rates than anywhere else. So a state like Maine that's predominantly white is definitely going to have some very serious, very high overdose rates. And that does contribute to a lot of crime. Even when we enter New Hampshire, we noticed that there was a lot of warning signs, and everywhere we went there was like stuff that let you know that addiction was very high. New Hampshire was definitely a beautiful state along the coast. It's a small state. New Hampshire is not giant, so you can pretty much cover New Hampshire quite literally in a day or two. If you're just looking for a general geographical understanding of the composition of the state. For $71, we had some of the best Latin food that I've ever had anywhere in the United States in Rhode Island. I really loved Rhode Island. And then we hopped on over into New York City, where we had live music play for us. I love New York City. The hotel was pretty reasonable. The trick to New York City is not going into Manhattan. Go out there and see like the real New York City, areas on the outskirts, suburbs that are better. New York City has so much to offer. Let me just remind you that you can experience the Northeast in a lot of different states. The coast of Connecticut was beautiful. We had lobster rolls there, and the hotel stay in Rhode Island was $230. However, in New York City, we actually had a hotel stay for only $190 in the area of Tuckahoe, which is where we are now. However, that included parking, which is a huge plus in New York City. And this restaurant, while the food wasn't that expensive, you do have to tip, you do have to give the guys playing live music some money, and you do have to pay at the restaurant when you park. So in New York City, prepare your wallet because money is going to start moving very quickly. And at some point, you do have to play the dumb tourist card and pay a little extra tip and get caught in the live music. And it's okay to do that. We decided to do that in New York City. There's parts of the trip where you're just going to let your guard down and you are going to spend more money than you normally thought you would. And that's okay. That's part of enjoying the experience. And to me, New York City is definitely one of the most incredible places to travel. So many people get caught up with the traffic of Manhattan. What we did is we came along the coast, skipped over into Queens, came out of Staten Island. We did not touch Manhattan on this road trip, and it was probably the best move we ever could have did because you got to see the real New York, the outskirts of New Jersey, places like Tuckahoe. These are great places in the New York City area that don't have to get you involved with being stuck in traffic for 2 hours in Manhattan. The ridiculous costs and complications of New York City's most densely populated areas, that's not the real New York City experience. I feel like New York City is thousands of little communities all up against each other, and you just really got to dive into them and just learn from it and experience every little bit of it and kind of see the fusion in our meal here. It's a Mexican restaurant, but you can just tell by the black olives and just a little other touches how definitely it has other influences. I walked around Tuckahoe at night. You hear horrendous things about New York City. Walked around at night. It did feel a little sketchy, but it wasn't terrifying. I feel like there's so much emphasis on portraying places like New York City as dangerous and bad. If you buy into that garbage, you're going to miss out on the absolute best things that the United States has to offer. Namely, places like New York City, Los Angeles, San Francisco. These are real travel destinations. These are the highlights, the most iconic cities in the United States, yet they're pushed in the media as being horrible, dangerous places to visit, when really these are the places you should visit the most because they have the most to offer. So as always, if you get away from the real tourist traps like Manhattan and get to see the real New York, you can expect some incredible experiences traveling through this region of the country. The drive back to Florida was a steady one because we were just tired of being so many days on the road. Our last stop was in Jacksonville Beach, Florida, one of my favorite destinations in the United States. I just love the vibes of Jacksonville Beach. And the hotel stay would have been $330. However, we used our reward points from Marriott Bonvoy to get a free night stay in Jacksonville, Florida. And we had a very relaxing, beautiful day. We stayed right on the beach. And this is definitely a must-do place in Florida. If you're coming from the Northeast, stay in Jacksonville Beaches. Right on the water. The beaches in Jacksonville usually aren't the cleanest water you're gonna find. It's not like Clearwater, Florida or Miami, but the vibes make up for it. We stayed at a beautiful beachside hotel that cost us nothing but our reward points, and we actually had lunch or breakfast at the Waffle House Hotel. One of the most beautiful experiences you're ever gonna have is staying at a beachside hotel. When you wake up in the morning and you open that window and you're looking straight into the ocean and you feel that breeze in the morning, that is definitely amazing. So skip out on the Best Western, get yourself a nice beachside hotel. The most I've ever paid for a beachside hotel is about $330, and these are new hotels. I always time my visits to when hotel stays are below $330 to stay directly on the water. There's times of the year where you can pay like $600 or $700 to stay right on the water. That's too much money. Our last day on the road, we ate at a Puerto Rican restaurant in Ocala, Florida, and it was $110. Ironically, the next day in Bradenton, where we live, we went to a Cuban restaurant, which is very similar type of meal, for $65, which goes to show that even in the same state, the same meal in one place can be $110 and another place can be $65. Many times those hotels along the beach or more expensive areas that are $85, $90, $110 meals are no better than a hole-in-the-wall mom and pop place that can sometimes be half the price and better, fresher food. The best food that we found on this road trip was definitely in Rhode Island. We hit up some nice suburbs of Rhode Island's Providence. Rhode Island's a tiny state, and we found Cuban, Puerto Rican, Colombian food throughout the entire trip to be the best cuisine we had, as well as we ate at that really nice breakfast place in Montreal. That was expensive, but it was good. And of course, along the New England coast, you're going to find restaurants, lobster areas, and stuff like that, where you're going to pay a lot of money for the food and it's good. But there's other times where you pay a lot of money for a meal, and when you walk out and you're like, well, it's expensive, but was it good? Not really. So after 14 days on the road and less than $4,500 spent, I feel very satisfied with this road trip. And if you want to embark on this road trip, you can reduce the price simply by not staying at Marriott hotels. I stay with Marriott because I am absolutely not getting bed bugs. We travel way too often, and if I start to staying at hotels that don't have good hygiene, eventually we're going to get bed bugs. Also, when we're on the road, we are working. We're covering hundreds of miles a day, recording hours of video. And if you're working that hard, you're going to eat good. You're going to stay in good hotels. I'm not going to travel like an indigent. Overall, for less than $5,000 in a worst case scenario, a Florida to Canada road trip is definitely worth it. Let's not forget that to enter Canada, you're going to need passports. And I think that ran us about $600, but we're going to use that to travel to more than just Canada, so that really doesn't apply to the cost of this particular road trip since you kind of need a passport regardless. Another great hotel in Jacksonville is the one right in front of us now. It's called The Element in Jacksonville Beach, and it's only 2 blocks away from the water. Jacksonville Beach is definitely one of those destinations you want to have on your list, and I would say if I had to summarize 5 places along the route that you definitely must visit, I would say Toronto, Quebec City, the Maine coast, Rhode Island, Jacksonville Beach, and finally, I would have to say either New York City or Montreal. Those were definitely the highlights of this trip. If I had to say 5 spots that were probably not worth visiting along this route, I would definitely say that, at least for me, Georgia has become uneventful simply because I've been through it so many times. Eastern Tennessee, I've done it enough to where it doesn't excite me anymore like it did the first time I saw the national parks there. Driving through Ohio was pretty uneventful. I would have to say that the Kentucky eastern side really is a horrible place to visit. There's really nothing tourist oriented there. And then you have to say, to be honest, that some parts of Maine, apart from the coast and the really wooded areas, when you just get like along Interstate 95 through Maine, it really is completely uneventful and the customer service sucks. The state of Connecticut really didn't impress me in any way at all. Rhode Island was definitely a pleasant surprise. And I do have to say that the state of Virginia, while the people seem nice, doesn't ever seem like I've made memories while traveling through Virginia. I might have to hit up Virginia Beach and see if I can change that, but so far the state of Virginia has never really made any memories for me. And that is the recap of our trip, how much money we spent. And I think for $4,500, this is definitely a very good road trip. I would do every effort possible to avoid the city of Boston. The traffic there is unbearable. And while historical for America, you have to see it. There's a few cities you have to see. Boston, you have to see. Washington, D.C., you have to see these places because of their significance. But as far as like traveling, they're not enjoyable cities. You could probably throw Manhattan on that list as well. And what I've learned traveling so much through the United States is to stay in new hotels, find authentic food in suburbs that are a little bit more diverse, up and coming. And we're starting to avoid staying in the downtowns of city and sticking with newer suburbs where the hotels are newer, which means you're probably going to get a better experience at those hotels and you're not going to have to pay for parking or other unexpected tips. Seems like the more we travel, the better we get at it, and the worst travel experiences become less common. I can say that on this road trip, we really didn't have any bad experiences. In Toronto, our first night in Canada, the person at the hotel, a very nice hotel, let me add, tried to scam us by telling us that our credit card wouldn't work for our stay in Canada and getting us to leave our credit card with him. Bless his heart. We did not go for that. But anyways, other than that one person in Canada tried to scam us into letting him hold our debit card, which was definitely not going to happen, and I knew it wasn't necessary. Other than that one experience, which he wasn't able to get me, but there's times we travel and we run into horrific experiences. So it was a good thing that on this road trip, the bad experiences were an absolute minimal. And I think that's starting to come from experiences of learning what to avoid while traveling and knowing how to anticipate things and prepare better for travel destinations, which has meant that the more we travel, the better we get at it, the safer and more enjoyable our trips become. And we also learn what types of areas and attractions are not worth doing and spending money on, and what experiences are much more favorable. We've really gotten better at traveling. There it is, guys. That is the recap of our trip. And if you guys have any suggestions for trips we should go on in the future, please let us know. Alaska, British Columbia, Oregon, Washington. We're definitely thinking about the Northwest. We still haven't covered that, as well as Montana and Idaho. We still haven't got into Iowa and Nebraska. We're also thinking Puerto Rico and Mexico. Eventually we'll travel to more destinations, and I know it feels like it takes forever, guys. When we were thinking about going to New York City, these trips are very expensive. Now we've been to New York City twice, and it felt like we were never going to go there. California, I felt like we were never going to be able to afford to go to California, and we did it. Going into Canada, I never thought I would have the money or the time to do that road trip, and we did it. So continue to watch and follow our channel patiently, and if there's a spot we haven't got to yet, please believe at some point we'll be in your backyard. It's been a long journey getting me and Katie to all these places, but eventually with patience it'll be worth it. We're not billionaires. We have to work for every dollar we get. So it takes a lot longer than we wish it would take. And I'll be honest, even at the current rate that we're going on, traveling can be overwhelming when you're doing it for a full-time job all the time. I love you guys. Thank you so much for following our journey through life. And remember that my wife Katie's a realtor in Florida. If you're thinking about spending some money in the Sunshine State on a property, it was you guys who encouraged us and forged all these paths for us. Both Katie being a realtor and me being able to travel more, it all came through YouTube. So I want to thank every last one of you guys who supports us through this long journey. Yes, I have my personal antics that at times can be completely unbearable, but we're all imperfect, and I hope you guys really liked this video, and I hope it helps you if you have any travel ideas on places you want to go to.